Hey everybody, it's Zach with Bluegrass Rentals of EKY. You're with me again in the office this morning. Thank you for being here. If you're not already subscribed, I'd really appreciate that subscription as we continue to seek to grow this channel in all things real estate investing and from a Christian perspective. So again, thank you for being here. I'm a registered nurse, travel nurse, and my goal is to go from full-time RN to full-time real estate, regardless of how long that journey takes. But that's what this channel is all about, is financial freedom for you and me and our families, going from a full-time W-2 career to a entrepreneur within the realm of real estate. So again, thank you for being here. I'm a little under the weather right now, so if I sound a little bit nasally, I just want to ask for your understanding in that regard, as I know a lot of people are sick. So that's why that is. Now I wanted to talk to you kind of free form in this video about the topic that I've seen a lot of kind of circulating the Airbnb world and topics and discussion groups I've been a part of about Airbnb. And the subject is the idea of super properties as a Airbnb or short-term rental operator or investor. And so what is a super property? Well, I think usually the way I'm understanding the idea in terms of super property being used is just what it sounds like: a house that is magnificent with all the available possible amenities provided to it, whether you have some type of like 5-bed, 5-bath cabin with a putt-putt golf course on site. You've got a pool, maybe a modular pool. You've got pickleball courts, or maybe a split pickleball court, basketball court kind of combo. And I've seen a lot of people do these videos on how they have achieved financial freedom rather than through having many properties, just having 1 or 2 or 3 super properties. And so I want to jump into that topic today and discuss that with you, both its positives and its negatives and considerations you may have. So where am I coming from in this discussion? So when I came into real estate investing, I had saved up about $35,000 to $40,000 from my W-2 career. I worked as a nurse throughout COVID, and so I was saving up money from that, not much debt prior to investing in real estate. And so our budget was dictated by what we had to put on a home and a down payment. And so whereas at the time, Airbnb was really booming more in terms of everybody could buy almost anything and make money on it. This is about 3 years ago, and ultimately 4 years ago when I started researching Airbnb, 3 years ago when I was saving for an Airbnb, 2 years ago when I bought my first land for building a cabin for Airbnb, and investing in 3 rental arbitrage properties, all of which were budget-based properties. My nightly rates were about $100 a night or less, and sometimes more on weekend nights or compression events. But the point of it is that I was doing budget listings. In my rental arbitrage example, I invested $27,000 into furnishings for 3 properties, 2 2-bed, 1-bath apartments, and 1 3-bed, 2-bath house. And from that $27,000 initial investment, we were able to gross $66,000 in gross income from those 3 properties in one single year in Ashland, Kentucky, which is not a traveled to destination as far as for vacationers. It's more like traveling workers, maybe other traveling nurses, traveling dock workers, where we have a big oil and gas plant near us with engineers often traveling to it. So there was a lot of more of the budget working traveler. And so I thought that was pretty good. But when I started entering into the Airbnb space, I went to a couple conferences on short-term rentals, and I started to feel bad about what I had invested in, from this mindset of comparison and comparing myself to others, thinking, well, my Airbnbs, they look okay, but they're not. None of them had hot tubs. None of them had pools. None of them had amenities. I didn't have the money to do that. And ultimately, my demographic of people I was reaching out to through my rental arbitrages didn't really want those amenities. It wasn't a part of what they were looking for. And though it may have brought me a little bit more revenue, I'm sure, it really wasn't the target demographic for those properties. And so through the mindset of being comparing myself to others, which is a mistake we all can make in this initial journey and even throughout the entire process of it, I thought, well, my properties really aren't much, like they're nothing. And I would even have been told probably from some short-term rental influencers on YouTube or the like that my properties would have sucked in their perspective. But $66,000 in gross income on a $27,000 investment, profiting somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000 of that 66. To be honest, that was over a 100% cash on cash return. I don't think that they sucked, no matter how much others would have judged my listings and their opinions of what that looked like. We did not have professional photography. We did not have the highest quality furniture in the property. A lot of it was whether it's Target or IKEA. And so they did well. This has been about 2 years ago. So Airbnb, what is the status of it today? It's more competitive than ever. And they are correct, many of these influencers, that there are Airbnb hosts dropping off left and right. Short-term rental investors are kind of falling off because there's a saturation, they claim, of Airbnbs in every market. And so only those with the highest quality properties are the only people that will last, because the highest quality properties don't suck or are cooler or better than yours. And it's sort of an attitude of arrogance in a lot of ways to look at people that are doing the best they can with the financials that they have and tell them that their properties suck because it isn't like yours. What I think a lot of investors have done that are propagating the idea of super properties is these people promoting the idea of buying the multi-million-dollar house, investing at $200,000 in amenities. They are forgetting that the average investor simply is not able to do that. That is nowhere near achievable in the beginning for most short-term rental operators when they get started out. And so, it ends up making a lot of people feel disenfranchised by the idea that you told me I could get financial freedom through short-term rentals, but now you're telling me I need $2 million to do that. And I don't have that money. And the saying is, it takes money to make money. And so these super property promoters have done very well for themselves. And I would never take that away from their hard work. Buying a few $1-million properties and making hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit per year off a few properties, instead of making less profit per amount of properties that you have. You might need 5 or 10 properties to make what one super property is doing. And 5 or 10 properties is way more work than one super property. But if you cannot buy a initial larger property in a high value market, then you might be relegated to needing several properties at first to get started. That's where I found myself. There's no way in the beginning I could have afforded a multi-million-dollar cabin, put hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of investment into amenities in something like the Red River Gorge, where I'm currently investing in right now, and been able to even do it. I did not have the money, and nobody would have entrusted me with that money as a co-partner or as a fellow investor because I had no track record. And that's where a lot of people are getting started out in this. A lot of initial investors run into a host of challenges when they're getting started. They may have not much credit history. Their financials position may not be very straight when they're going to make their first investments. Maybe they have some bad debt on their record they need to get rid of or taken care of first. And then on top of that, once they do have a down payment saved up of some amount, that's going to dictate what they can get into in the beginning. So the idea of people going around and telling other new beginning investors that they suck or their listings suck because their house isn't worth $2 million in a market that is unbelievably expensive is very difficult. I mean, that's very disenfranchising to people that are just in the beginning stages. And I think these people promoting the idea of super properties are really just forgetting what it was like to start out. Or maybe when they began, they didn't come at this with a big restraint on what they could invest like, because they had a larger amount of money in the beginning. Maybe they also had a large, high-paying W-2 career that made their initial down payments upwards of $100,000 or $200,000 type of things. And if you're throwing around money like that, I'm sure there's people that would be willing to invest with you to put amenities on a property and make it something super. And I think that is great. I think the idea of making a ballpark home run hit property rather than 5 mediocre properties really does make a lot of sense. And that's where I come at this with the positive aspects of super properties, that you're decreasing the amount of work for the same amount of profitability. It's like a return on your time. If you got 5 Airbnbs, the most I've ever been managing at one time is my 3 rental arbitrages. And even just those 3 properties, I probably had more issues managing those because of the quality of property that it was. It was not the nicest or newest properties in town, so there was hiccups with the plumbing. That we had to do a lot of painting initially to make them more attractive. There was the nightly rates we're charging $70 to $110 a night tends to attract a a more careless guest. Not that we had bad guests, but we had issues at times with some poor guest quality that we had to deal with over our nightly rates being just what they were, attracting the people that they attracted, versus a super property where the people renting out your $1 million house are probably your doctors, your lawyers, your larger group families, your people that are going to be more apt to have a professional background because they have the money to live that way and rent that property, and may end up being a better guest in terms of how they treat it. So there's a really true point to the idea of super properties as a return on your time. And that makes a lot of sense. But in the beginning stages, a lot of us are just getting our first blows and punches when it comes to getting into this game initially. You're just trying to find a property that fits your budget, that's going to be in a market you want to be in, relatively speaking, and hoping the best that when you're dealing with, like I had to do, contractors in the beginning, that you find reliable contractors you can trust, vendors you can trust, like handyman and cleaners. So there is so much happening for the initial investor that's going on. And we have so many fall offs on either side of the road that we could take. The one thing I don't want you to do when you hear the idea of super properties is to get discouraged about what you have invested in or what you're capable of investing into. My local market where my rental arbitrages were in Ashland, Kentucky is about to really boom for short-term rentals because of the massive expansion of King's Daughters Medical Center in Ashland, Kentucky, which will require a heavy amount of traveling medical staff and will also become a more prominent educational-based facility, which means doctors will be brought in that are in school and other medical staff that's being educated, and they're going to need a place to stay. So plus all the workers working on these types of expansion projects within the city need a place to stay. So my point in saying all this is that if you live with a comparison-based mindset, there's always going to be someone with something bigger than yours or has invested in more than you have, that you feel knows more than you, or that will even flaunt their wealth and financial success in front of you and could lead you to becoming discouraged. But you must remember, and this is where the Christian aspect, I think, of my life will help me, not that I haven't made these same mistakes and being comparison to others at times, is that we live before an audience of one. If you're living before an audience of God alone, then you are not going to be so distraught or discouraged when you hear others flaunting themselves to you or should I say, comparing yourself to someone else. It's not going to be that kind of thing because money, again, does not rule your mindset. It does not rule your life. It is a tool in your life, but it does not command your life. And so when you're doing the best you can with the abilities and financials that you have, and you're doing that ultimately to set your family free and better yet to honor God, then there is a peace that comes over you regardless of whether or not your down payment is $10,000 or $30,000, whether or not your property is a rental arbitrage that you had 8 to 10 grand to put on. And so the point is that it does indeed go back to doing initial good grunt work in your study to make sure you're investing in a good market so the money you are putting down makes sense. But then comes the aspect of, well, it's not good enough. And so there's this cycle where people are constantly trying to escape an attitude of discouragement. And I think it ultimately does go back to how you view yourself in light of God. And when you remember your why for why you got into investing in the beginning, you did it for you did it for your family. And when your family is gaining financial ground because of your smaller investment, then that's a win. That's a win. Whether or not the profit there's $100 grand a year or $10,000 a year, that's $10,000 more in your pocket you did not have. And ideally that $10,000 is being obtained in profit with a managed amount of time you're giving to it. And that's the aspect that ultimately we are investing from. My whole goal with short-term rental and real estate investing in general, whether that's long terms, mid-terms, short terms, is financial or rather say time freedom. It really isn't about the money for me. It was never about the money for me. And I've never been a big money-minded person, which is probably why I haven't gained a massive amount of success in it yet, which we're growing there. And ultimately wanting to honor God and our perspectives within that, which can be a danger because if you cannot serve God and money, the Bible says. So you need to be very careful about how you're managing your thought patterns around these topics. But when your thought patterns are healthy and God-centered and God-honoring, then I did it for my family. I want to be around my family more. I don't want to be subject to a career that if I'm not there, I don't make a dime. And that's exactly what my current job is like as a travel nurse. If I don't show up, there is no money coming my way. There's zero. And so it's all about giving up your time. And that's something that as I enter into my 10th year of being a nurse, I wanted to plan better for what does the future hold. I'm 30 years old. I don't want to do this forever. And I see that there's a better outcome for us if we really grind in the investment world that is lying ahead of us and for us to be able to get into, even if those initial investments are 20 grand investments, all in type of thing in the beginning, upfront cost type of deal. So the point is, I know people that are doing very well with these smaller investments that aren't super properties. So don't become discouraged if you are hearing the term thrown around within the investment space of super properties and feeling like you are not good enough because you don't have a super property, or you feel that your property is mediocre to some extent. That goal here is to maximize what you do have. And that's really the idea of super property in its best light, is maximizing what you have. So can you bring these amenities to the table that are going to attract more guests, higher nightly rates? Can you maximize your property? It's investing back into what you already have. And that's something that Rob built, his host camp group that I'm a part of, has been doing so much of in this last year. The idea of not only creative finance for acquiring properties, how to invest in a difficult financial world, but also reinvesting back into the properties that you have, because there's juice to be squeezed out of the property you've already got. He gave an example of putting in a putt-putt golf type of course at one of his beach properties in Galveston, Texas. And while he could have taken the money for that and put it on another property, he decided to reinvest money back in his Galveston, Texas property, and that reinvestment was somewhere in the 30% cash on cash return on the amenities he was providing in his property. Whereas if he bought a new property, brand new, it may have been a goal of 15 to 20% cash on cash return. So the cash on cash for investing back into his property to make it something super was higher than going and just buying the next property and the next property. So it's really about maximizing what you do have rather than becoming discouraged by what you do have. It's about looking at what you can do in front of you rather than what you can't because you don't have enough money. And it's really all about a growth mindset rather than a limited mindset. How does people say that? Some of you may comment down below what that mindset is, like a lack mindset versus a profit or a growth mindset. It's the idea of solution-based thinking rather than negative and discouraged types of thinking that you cannot affect or control. So I just want to leave you with that today. Live before an audience of one. Live before an audience of God alone. Don't let money and comparison rule how you view your investment strategies and what it is that you've been doing. Get that out of your head and ultimately hear what their super property promoters are saying, which is maximizing what you do have in front of you rather than becoming discouraged or maybe even trying to grasp for the next property when that return on that may not be as high as doing something within the properties that you already have. So be creative in that way. Don't rush into your next move, but think it through thoroughly. Do your research. See what happens. Maybe your property could bring you a lot more than you think it could or that it is right now, with a little bit of that effort in the back end to make it something super. So thank you for joining me again here today. That's just kind of my ramble that I wanted to bring you on the idea of super properties and investing mindset. This is Zach Humphrey going from full-time RN to full-time RE Bluegrass Rentals of EKY. We're investing in the Red River Gorge. If you're interested in maybe asking what that would look like, if you would like to learn more about Red River Gorge STR market, or even partnering with me and my wife as we invest in the Red River Gorge. We have a lot we'd like to put a cabin on right now. And if anyone is interested in investing with us or bringing some cash into a financial partnership, that is something we are considering with other investors. If you want to invest with us, just DM us the message or comment down below the word invest. And we would be happy to reach out to you and see if we could do something together in terms of investing in real estate. So again, Zach Humphrey, Bluegrass Rentals. Thank you for joining. God bless you.